All right, so we're going to start day 3 of Unit 3. We've added, we've subtracted, we've multiplied. Now we're going to go ahead and divide polynomials. It's kind of the next logical step. So I've got 2x cubed minus 7x squared plus 0x minus 4, and I'm going to divide that by the binomial x minus 3. Now there are really two ways that we can do this. One of the ways that this can be done is this can be done using long division. If you remember long division from back when you were in elementary school, or maybe 6th grade, or whenever the last time you did division without using your calculator, if you remember what long division looks like, I've got 127 over here divided by 8. And remember what you would do you would put, 8 doesn't go into 1, but 8 goes into 12 once. So I've got 8 there, and then we're going to subtract. And then we've got 12 minus 8 is 4, bring down the 7 with. And then how many times does 8 go into 47? Well, it goes in there 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. We have a remainder of 7. So our answer here would be 15 7/8. We can do that with polynomials. I could rewrite this problem just like I have highlighted here. And it works, but there's a faster way to do it and an easier way to do it, which is a little bit shorthand way of doing it. And we can get rid of the variables, or we can get rid of all of the, we can get rid of the variable x with all of them. So here's what we do. We're going to use what's called synthetic division to do this. So I have my problem set up just like I had it before. I've got that x minus 3, and that is dividing 2x cubed minus 7x squared plus 0x minus 4. Now you notice I have a 0x sitting in there. The original problem, there wasn't an x in there. But the first thing you need to make sure of is when you're doing this dividing is you need to make sure that it's in standard form and that all of the exponents are taken care of. So in this case, I've got 3, 2. 1 wasn't there, so I had to include it in there. So we always got to go, in this case, 3, 2, 1, and none. Okay, so this part of it, the yellow part here that I'm about to highlight, this is called the divisor. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the 0 of that divisor. So what it means to find the 0 of the divisor is it means that I'm going to take that divisor and I'm going to set it equal to 0, and then I'm going to solve. So this tells me that my 0 for this is going to be 3. And then what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to put that inside of kind of this half little box right here. So you'll notice I've got the 3 sitting there inside of the box. So that's the first step we're going to do. And again, the first thing we did here was I set my divisor equal to 0, and I found essentially what it's zeros. We talked about the zeros in the last chapter. When we were factoring quadratics, we found the zeros. Kind of the same thing. So we found the 0 and found the 0 was 3. So that's kind of step 1. Step 2, what you're going to do is you are just going to take the numbers and you are going to drop all of the numbers and the operation, addition or subtraction, that's in front of them with it. Now I brought down -7. I didn't bring down positive. It shouldn't be positive x. I'm just looking at the numbers, remember? So I'm going to go ahead and erase that. Because there's nothing there, I'm just going to put a 0 there because that's my number that I have, 0 times x. And then I'm going to end it with -4. So essentially I've taken and I've dropped down the symbol and the number with it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line. So I've got my line drawn. Okay, that's kind of this next step. So the next step, we're going to kind of start to solve this. So first step is I'm going to take this 2, that leading coefficient, and I'm just going to drop that down below the line. Okay, so I drop that down. Next step then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 0, that 3 that I found, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to multiply 3 times 2. And the result of that is going to go up above. So 3 times 2 is 6. So now I've got things above the line. Now, the nice thing about this, in long division, you had to subtract. Now we're just going to add. So we're going to add these two things together, and the result of that is going to go underneath. So the result of negative 7 plus 6 is negative 1. So we add if it's above the line. Now I've got that negative 1 below the line, so now I'm going to take that that positive 3, and I'm going to take it times negative 1. Positive 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. So it's above the line. If it's above the line, that means we're going to take these and we're going to add them together. 0 plus negative 3 is negative 3. Now it's below the line. Anytime it's below the line, you're going to multiply it by the 0 of the divisor. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. So the result of multiplying always goes above the line. If they're both above the line, you add them together to get what's below the line. This last one, I've got nothing else sitting out here. There's nothing left out here. So this last part right here, this part is what we call the remainder of our division problem. So like our remainder was 7 up there, that's the remainder of that. Okay. So we're done with the kind of the division part of it, but now we have to put it back into the form of a polynomial. And the way we put that back into the form of the polynomial is we're just going to take all of these numbers and we're just going to bring them back down. Oops, that should be negative 3, apologize. And it should be negative 3, and then I'm going to drop down this negative 13. And now we're going to put the variables back to them. Now here's the key with the variables that we're putting back to them. You notice that we started with 3. We are going to go 1 less than we had up there. So I had 3, that one's going to drop to 2, that's going to drop to 1, and the 3 was 1, so it's going to drop to 0. Now we've got this remainder. This remainder over here, this is actually going to be placed over the top of our divisor. So our complete solution to this division problem is 2x squared minus x minus 3 with a remainder of negative 13 over x minus 3. This is the result of taking 2x cubed minus 7x squared plus 0x minus 4 and using synthetic division to do this. Okay. So let's look at another example. Okay, so we're going to use synthetic division. It's our shorthand way. Okay, this is written a little bit different. So over here, this part right here is my divisor. So inside the box, remember, if I put my little box over here, inside that box is the 0 of our divisor. So I'm just going to write it over here. So add 2 to both sides. So my x is 2, so 2 is going to go inside that box. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to drop my coefficients down. It's negative x, so that's the same thing as negative 1. It's 7, drop down the 7. I started with 3, 2, 1, and none, so I didn't have to add any in there this time. So I've got all of my coefficients. I'm going to draw my line. Always have to drop that first one down. Drop that first one straight down. So drop 2 down. Now it's below the line. So if it's below the line, we multiply. 2 times 2 is 4. The result of multiplying goes above the line. Next step is we're going to take the 2 times the... got to add those together. I got ahead of myself a little bit. 5 plus 4 is 9, so I'm below the line. Now I'm going to take 2 times 9. 2 times 9 is 18. We've got above the board, above the line, so we add negative 1 plus 18 is 17. It's below, so I need to multiply it by my 0. So that's 34. 17 times 2 is 34. Add these two together, we get 41, as our remainder. So we've got it divided. I started with x cubed. So that means this, I'm going to drop down, is going to become 2x squared plus 9x plus 17 with a remainder of positive 41 over my divisor, which was x minus 2. And we're done. That's synthetic division, to divide polynomials. Much easier than doing the long division. Long division, you get the same exact answer. But yeah, you have to be very careful when you're doing synthetic division. You got to make sure that you're double checking your math. You know, when I was sitting up here with this one up here, you noticed I kind of said, okay, I got to take 2 times 4. And I said, oh, wait a minute, I didn't have anything that was underneath the line, so I needed to add these. So you got to go slow sometimes. If you have to get your calculators out to do the math, get your calculators out to do the multiplying and all of those things. So next example, 3x to the 4th minus 5x cubed plus 2x squared minus x plus 5. Now it's going to be divided by x plus 1. Now understand that this is the same thing. These two things mean the same thing. Kind of looks like the one we had before, just a different way to write it. So this now is my divisor. So when I'm trying to figure out what I want to put inside of the box, I got to set that divisor equal to 0. So x is going to be negative 1. So negative 1 is going to go in there. Okay, now I'm just going to look at all my numbers. I've got 3. I've got negative 5. That's the third. I've got 2. I've got negative 1. And I've got 5. So I started with x to the 4th. I've got all of them. And my constant at the end. So I didn't skip any, so I'm good. Draw my line. Drop the 3 down. Now we're going to multiply here and here. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. That gives me negative 8. Negative 5 plus negative 3 is negative 8. Negative 1 times 8. Negative 8 is 8. 2 plus 8 is 10. Negative 1 times 10 is negative 10. Negative 1 plus negative 10 is negative 11. And negative 1 times negative 11 is 11. 5 plus 11 is 16. That's my remainder. I started with 3x to the 4th, so this is going to become 3x to the 3rd minus 8x squared plus 10x minus 11 with a remainder of positive 16 over my divisor, x plus 1. And that's my solution. And again, my solutions are just coming from there. We always go one less than what we started with when we're looking at our polynomial. Okay. So one of the things I talked about with the first one is I talked about, okay, what happens if we're missing a term? Anytime you're missing a term, you're going to fill it in with a 0 and then whatever x that is. If the missing one is x squared, you put it x squared. If the missing one is x, you put in 0x. So if we look at this one, I've got my divisor. So inside my box is going to go x plus 2 equals 0, so negative 2. So I start with x to the 3rd. So that means I have to go x squared, x, and my constant. So x to the 3rd is 8. X squared is 6. Notice I don't have an x, so I have to put a 0 there. My constant is 7. I draw my line. I drop down the 8. Negative 2 times 8 is negative 16. 6 plus negative 16 is negative 10. Negative 2 times 10, remember we're multiplying these. That's 20. 0 plus 20 is 20. Negative 2 times is negative 40. So that's negative 33. That's my remainder. So our solution, 8, we started with x to the 3rd, so now it's x squared minus 10x plus 20 minus 33 over x plus 2. And that's our solution. Okay. Let's look at another one. And again, my suggestion here for you would be to pause the video and try to do this one by yourself. And then once you've got it, go ahead and hit restart. Our divisor, going to be -2. Again, how did we get that? X plus 2 equals 0, solve for x. So I started with x to the 4th. So that means I have to have the 3rd squared, the x, and the constant. So the 4th, the 3rd, there's no x squared, so I got to put a 0, x, and -1. Draw my line. Drop the 3 down. -2 times 3 is -6. -1 plus -6 is -7. Again, remember, I'm multiplying. -2 times 7 is 14. 0 plus 14 is 14. -2 times 14 is -28. Ooh, that's -23. 5 plus -2 times, that's 46. So I've got a remainder of 45. So 3x to the 3rd minus 7x squared plus 14x minus 23 with a remainder of 45 over x plus 2. And there is your solution using thin synthetic division.
Hey, so what I would do right now is I'd kind of stop and do the first 5 questions of the worksheet for today. I'm going to create a second video that's the back sides, questions 6 through 12, that deals with the remainder theorem and what's called the factor theorem, which is both the Monday and Tuesday lesson. So I'll put that video in both of them. But at this point, you can only do the first 5 questions. So I'd go do the first 5 questions, then come back and do the remainder theorem and the factor theorem questions on the back, questions 6 through 12. And then you'll have kind of a head start for Tuesday's assignment as well. Hope you're doing well.